Once upon a time, in a small village, a widow named Lee lived with her two daughters, Aa and Nia. Life had not been easy since their father passed away. His illness had drained all their savings, leaving the family in financial struggle. Despite this, Lee worked tirelessly to ensure her daughters received a good education, at least up to secondary school. After finishing school, Nia chose to learn hairdressing, understanding that having a skill would help her become independent. She worked hard every day, doing chores, cooking, and assisting her mother with household duties. However, Ai had different dreams. She believed her beauty was enough to change her fate. She often boasted, "I will marry a rich man and never have to work a day in my life." No matter how much Lee tried to teach Aa the importance of hard work, she refused to listen. She looked down on manual labor and often mocked Nia for wasting her time learning a skill. Instead, she spent her days admiring herself, scrolling through her phone, and dreaming about a luxurious future. Lee grew more and more frustrated. One morning, after finding Aa still lying in bed while Nia was already up and working, she scolded her. "At your age, your mates are in their husband's house, building a home. Is this how you will behave when you get married?" But Aa simply laughed and replied, "Mama, I will marry a rich man and hire maids to do everything for me. Why should I waste time learning a skill?" Her mother sighed deeply, worried about what the future held for her stubborn daughter. One fateful day, Lee sent her daughters to the market to buy food items. On their way back, something unexpected happened. A luxurious blue Jeep pulled up beside them. The tinted window rolled down automatically, and a deep, smooth voice called out, "Hello, beautiful." Aa's heart skipped a beat. The voice was directed at her. She turned to Nia with a smug look and whispered, "I told you, my beauty will bring me a rich husband." The man introduced himself as Ikim, a wealthy businessman. He complimented Aa's beauty and expressed his interest in getting to know her. Without thinking twice, Aa eagerly stepped aside to talk to him, completely ignoring Nia's warning glances. After a few minutes, Ikim drove off, leaving Aa smiling like she had just won a lottery. "He likes me, and I think I like him too," she declared proudly. Nia raised an eyebrow. "Are you sure you like him? Or is it because he drives a fine car?" But Aa dismissed her sister's concerns. In her mind, she had finally found her golden opportunity, the rich man of her dreams. That night, Aa waited impatiently for Ikim to call, but he didn't. She became restless, pacing around the room, unable to eat. 2 days passed without any word from him, and just as she was beginning to lose hope, her phone finally rang. It was Ikim. "I have been thinking about you, AK. I want to marry you. I will come to see your mother tomorrow so we can begin wedding preparations." Aya nearly dropped her phone in shock. Everything was happening so fast. She ran inside to tell her mother and Nia, but instead of sharing her excitement, Nia grew even more suspicious. "Aa, you barely know this man. You've only met him once. Shouldn't you at least get to know him first?" "Ah, Nia, there you go again with your bad luck. Didn't you say Chima would break my heart? And he did. Now you want to ruin my happiness again?" Lee, though skeptical, decided to wait and see who this mysterious wealthy suitor really was. The next day, Ikim arrived in his blue Jeep, looking charming and successful. He was dressed in an elegant white native attire, shiny leather shoes, and a black hat. He carried a bag filled with expensive whiskey as a gift for the family. "I am here to take your daughter as my wife," he announced confidently. Lee, being a protective mother, asked Ikim several questions, trying to understand his intentions. But he was well prepared and answered them smoothly, leaving no room for doubt. Then came the big question. "A, do you want to marry Ikim?" Without hesitation, Aa said yes, smiling proudly. Lee was still uneasy. Ikim wanted the wedding to happen within a month, a request that seemed unusual. However, he assured them, money is never a problem. And just like that, wedding preparations began. But something was off. Ikim was rarely around during the preparations. Whenever Aa wanted to see him, he would claim to be busy with business. Still, Aa didn't care. She was too excited about her fairy tale coming true. Finally, in less than 3 weeks, the traditional wedding was completed. The night before Aa left for the city with her new husband, her mother gave her final words of advice. Aa, remember, marriage is not all about riches. Respect your husband, be hardworking, and take care of your home. And please, don't bring a maid into your house. Something about this marriage doesn't feel right. For the first time, Aa noticed tears in her mother's eyes. But she brushed off the uneasy feeling. The next morning, Ikim arrived and Aa said goodbye to her family, stepping into what she thought was her dream life. The journey to the city was long, and as the evening fell, they arrived in front of a massive mansion. Aa's eyes widened in amazement. The house was even more beautiful than she had imagined. Finally, my dreams have come true, she whispered to herself. As they stepped inside, a well-dressed woman greeted them. Welcome home, sir. Aa, still beaming with excitement, turned to Ikim and asked, Who is she? And with a casual smile, Ikim dropped a bombshell. Oh, she's my first wife. What? You're married? Why didn't you tell me? Ikim smirked. You never asked. Aa felt her world shatter into a million pieces. She had married a man she knew nothing about, and now she was trapped. Aa stood frozen in the grand mansion, her mind racing. He's married? She felt like the walls were closing in on her. Ikim's first wife stood there, expressionless, almost as if this had happened before. Take me back to the village. This is not what I signed up for, Aa demanded, her voice shaking. Ikim let out a cold laugh. You're not going anywhere. I have paid your bride price in full. You belong to me now. It was at that moment that Aa realized her mistake. She had rushed into marriage with a stranger, blinded by wealth. And now she was trapped in a nightmare. The first wife, Madame Isa, remained silent, her face a mask of indifference. Aa searched her eyes for sympathy, for help, but found nothing. Follow the maid to your room, Ikim ordered before walking away. Aa felt weak in her knees. This can't be happening. She followed the maid, her body moving, but her mind was screaming for an escape. Aa's room was lavish, just as she had imagined her dream home to be. Golden curtains, silk bedsheets, a vanity full of expensive jewelry. But it didn't feel like home. It felt like a prison. Days turned into weeks, and Ikim barely spent time with her. The only time he came to her room was when he wanted to satisfy himself. You are my wife. Your duty is to please me, he would say coldly. Aa tried to fight back, tried to resist, but Ikim was stronger. The moment she refused him, he would force himself on her, ignoring her cries. Every night, she cried herself to sleep, wondering how she had ended up in this hell disguised as a palace. She wasn't a wife. She was a prisoner, a possession, a toy for Ikim's pleasure. The first wife, Madame Isa, never spoke to her. She walked around the house like a ghost, never meeting Aa's eyes. It was as if she knew what Aa was going through, but had already accepted her fate. And then the nightmares began. One night, Aa woke up gasping for breath. She had dreamt of a room full of women dressed in red. They surrounded a basket in the center of the room. Inside the basket was a newborn baby. It's time, a voice whispered. Aa watched in horror as the women tore the baby apart, feasting on its flesh. She screamed, begged, pleaded, but they only laughed. This is the price of greed, one of the women whispered into her ear. Aa woke up drenched in sweat. Her hands went to her stomach. Her baby was still there. Was it just a dream? Or was it something more? The next morning, Aa fell ill. She had a terrible headache, nausea, and an overwhelming sense of dread. She didn't want to believe it. But when she went to the bathroom, she saw blood. She had miscarried. Her screams shook the mansion. Aa was rushed to the hospital, tears streaming down her face. Doctor, tell me my baby is fine. Please, she begged. But the doctor shook his head. I'm sorry, but you lost the baby. A collapsed in grief. No, it was just a dream. This wasn't real. But deep down, she knew the truth. The woman in red had taken her child. She had lost everything. When she returned home, Ikim didn't console her. He didn't even acknowledge her pain. Instead, he ignored her completely, as if nothing had happened. A wanted answers. She needed to know what was happening in this house. And the only person who could help her was Madame Isa. One evening, A found Madame Isa sitting in the living room. She gathered the courage to approach her. "I need to know the truth," Aya whispered. Isa didn't respond. "Please, what is happening in this house? Why do I feel like I'm trapped in something I don't understand?" Isa finally looked at her. For the first time, A saw pain in her eyes. "You should never have come here." A froze. "What do you mean?" Isa sighed, standing up. "This house is not a home. It's a prison. It's a curse." "A curse?" Isa's eyes darkened. Ikim is not just a businessman. He is a ritualist. A felt her blood run cold. "What? Did you think he married you out of love?" "No, he married you for something greater, something darker." The baby A whispered, her voice shaking. Isa nodded. "Yes, your child was never meant to live. It was an offering." A staggered backward. The dream was real. The women in red were real. She had been sacrificed. "There is no escape," Isa whispered. "We are both trapped." Back in the village, Nia had become suspicious. A's phone had been switched off for weeks, and that wasn't like her. "Mama, I'm going to the city to find her," Nia announced. "How will you find her?" "The city is big. A sent me the address when she first arrived. I'm going there." And so Nia set off on a journey to rescue her sister. When she arrived at Ikim's mansion, the guards wouldn't let her in. But fate was on her side. Ikim happened to arrive just then. "Who are you?" he asked coldly. "I'm A's sister. I need to see her." Ikim stared at her for a moment. Then, with a smirk, he nodded. "Let her in." As Nia stepped into the house, A ran to her, tears streaming down her face. "Nia, you shouldn't have come." What's happening? Tell me the truth." But before A could speak, a knock came at the door. A maid stood there, fear in her eyes. "Madam A sir is calling you to his room." A felt her body go cold. Ikim never called her to his room. Something was terribly wrong. And she knew this was only the beginning. A froze at the doorway, her heart pounding against her chest. "Sir is calling you to his room," the maid repeated, her voice trembling slightly. Nia grabbed her sister's hand. "Aya, what's happening?" "You're scaring me." A turned to her sister, her eyes filled with pure terror. "Nia, you should leave. Right now." But before Nia could respond, Ikim's deep voice echoed from upstairs. I don't like waiting." The atmosphere shifted, thick with an eerie silence. "I'm coming," A finally whispered, her throat dry. She turned to Nia, gripping her hand tighter. "No matter what happens, do not follow me. Stay in this room. If I don't come back in 10 minutes, run." Nia's eyes widened in fear. You're scaring me." "What's going on?" "Just promise me." A begged. Nia hesitated, then nodded slowly. Taking a deep breath, Aya walked up the stairs, her steps heavy with dread. The door to Ikim's room was slightly open. She pushed it and stepped inside. Aa's blood turned to ice. The room was nothing like she expected. The luxurious bedroom was gone. Instead, she was standing in a dark chamber, walls covered with strange symbols written in red. At the center, there was a stone altar, lit by black candles. Ikim stood there, dressed in a red robe, his face unreadable. "Close the door," he commanded. Ai hesitated, her pulse racing. "Why? Why did you call me here?" She stammered. Ikim smiled coldly. Because it's time for you to fulfill your purpose. Ah, I felt her stomach twist. Purpose? Ikim stepped forward. Your baby was just the beginning. You're lying. A gasped. You stole my child. You tricked me. Ikim's eyes darkened. You thought you were marrying a rich man. But you married a god. A backed away. You are not a god. You're a monster. Ikim sighed and snapped his fingers. The door behind A locked itself. A was trapped. Ikim stepped closer, a dagger in his hand. You will bear me a son, A special child, a child of blood. But first, his cold fingers touched her face. We need another sacrifice. A's eyes widened. What? What sacrifice? Ikim's smile sent shivers down her spine. Your sister. A gasped. No, you can't. Ikim tilted his head. Then choose, your sister's life or your womb. A felt her world spinning. You want my baby again? She whispered. Not just your baby. Your future children. Your bloodline. A's knees gave way. This was why he married her. To breed children for sacrifice. Her head spun with choices. She had already lost one child. Could she really let Nia die to save herself? Time is running out, Kim said, raising the dagger. Meanwhile, downstairs, Nia's patience was running out. She paced around, her instincts screaming that something was wrong. Then, she noticed something the maid, Inda, was staring at her. You should not have come here, Inda whispered. What do you mean? Nia asked, her body tensing. Your sister is in danger. You must leave now. Nia's heart pounded. I'm not leaving without her. Inda shook her head. Then we must hurry. She grabbed Nia's wrist and pulled her toward the back door. But suddenly, a loud scream echoed through the house. A screamed in pain as Ikim forced her to the altar. You have one last chance, he growled. Choose your sister or your womb. A's mind shattered. She remembered the women in red, the visions, the whispers. Your blood for your blood. Ikim grabbed her hand and forced it onto her stomach. Decide, AK. A's heart broke into a million pieces. And then, she made her decision. She grabbed the dagger ANDST ABBEDIKIMIN TACHEST. Ikim's eyes widened in shock. You stupid girl, he gasped. Aya pulled the dagger out and stabbed him again this time, straight into his heart. A loud, unearthly scream filled the air. The walls trembled. The candles blew out. And Ikim fell to the ground, lifeless. The moment he died, the door unlocked. Nia and Inda burst inside, finding AA covered in blood, standing over Ikim's dead body. Oh my God, what have you done? Nia gasped. A collapsed into her sister's arms. I ended it, she whispered. It's over. But Inda shook her head. No, it's not over. Nia and AA looked at her in horror. We need to leave NOW. Before THE, why come for revenge? Inda rushed them through the secret exit, leading them out of the mansion. As they reached the main gate, a loud rumbling shook the ground. They're coming! Inda screamed. Nia grabbed AA's hand. UN? The sky turned black. A shadowy figure emerged from the house. It was Madame Isa. You killed him, she whispered, her eyes glowing red. YUKILEDDO, URMASTER. Suddenly, a force pulled Aya backward. Nia screamed and held on to her sister. No, let her go. Inda chanted something in an unknown language. A bright light exploded from the ground, sending Isa flying backward. Nia and AA stumbled out of the gate just as the mansion disappeared into darkness. A piercing scream filled the night, and then there was silence. AA and Nia never looked back. They escaped to the village, where their mother cried tears of joy upon seeing them. But AA, she would never be the same.